halftime.
we're
That's
live.
the halftime show.
Well, nothing what he says would surprise anybody in this community.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
really? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are.
Are you gentlemen ready?
As we'll ever be.
Okay. Oh, shall
should
we
mic up.
begin?
Let's begin.
Okay. Well, good evening,
Bring it over so
everybody.
you can hear it.
Good evening, everybody. Anyone who's on Zoom, if you could temporarily mute yourselves.
I'll mute everybody.
Thank you. So we're here this evening to review some information for the up-and-coming referendum that will be held on, what is the date? I'm
April
sorry.
5th.
April 5th. And we have Terry Johnson actually is out on a call right now. There was a call that came and he just skedaddled, and we're going to go ahead without him, and hopefully he'll make it back. But we figured what he's doing is much more important than answering questions, and we have some capable gentlemen here this evening. So in a few seconds, we will have Mark Cook and Paul Blount give a little overview of themselves and start their presentation. We will then, after the presentation, we will have time for about 20 questions. We hope that you have brought lots of questions with you. We will also be taking questions from the Zoom people.
Okay, bring it through.
Thank you. And should there not be an awful lot of questions, then we'll just open it up for discussion. And we also have a video that we're going to play. And then we will have a wrap-up at the end. The meeting is going to go till 8 o'clock. Now, just an introduction. My name is Melanie Smythe. I live in Germantown. I have the pleasure of working with Sheila Palinkas. We partner on a number of kitchen and restaurant projects. My background is I'm a registered architect, and I have been involved from the citizens' side in developing master plans and running community meetings for other communities. So this is my first time here, and I appreciate the opportunity and enjoy meeting some characters who are here this evening. So with that, we'll turn it over to Paul and Mark. If you could introduce yourselves and then run your presentations. Thank you.
Is it okay if I sit?
Paul's got better credentials,
Yes.
so we'll let him go first.
I'm Paul Blount. I'm the newer chief of EMS for the Cambridge area EMS district. I have been here just about 4 months, and I am really happy and thrilled to be able to serve the community and communities that make up the district. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to help the continued progress of the service and of the district. My background, just briefly, is that this is my 26th year as a paramedic. I'm also a credentialed firefighter 2 and fire officer, and also state of Wisconsin credentialed police officer. Most of my career has been in fire and in EMS. I've worked all over the United States, including here in southeastern Wisconsin, which is my home, and also in Atlanta, Georgia, and North Carolina. So a lot of experience and a lot of diverse experience, but I'm still learning and I'm still growing, and I find that Cambridge area EMS and the fire and EMS relationship is just another opportunity for me to continue to learn and continue to grow and continue to bring some of my skill set and the learning that I've done over the years to the district. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I will turn that over to Mark.
Thank you. Many of you know me. My name is Mark Cook, and I'm involved here because I'm the chairman of the town of Christiana. And by default, I found out later that the town of Christiana chairman is also on the fire commission. So I've been up to this fire commission stuff up to my balls, and it's rewarding. It's complicated and difficult, but we're here tonight to try to take some of that complication out of it.
Right.
Oh, shoot. I guess we have to get the present. Okay. Mark, I'm going to get yours up front here. Oops. one queued up first. I guess we'll have to start with this one, the slideshow, and then we'll do yours at the end.
Okay.
I can't see this. Oh, from beginning. There we go. Sorry. There should be.
You gonna do this one, Paul?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So the why. I wanted to take just an opportunity to talk about just my experience in the last 4 months and then overall experiences with why the Cambridge area EMS district and fire district might need a new station. Safety being the number one reason. And why is safety the number one reason? Well, we need safety for our responders. And obviously, our responders provide public safety and fire and EMS coverage for the public. So safety for our responders and safety for the general public. In the safety reasons, we have a long list of things that we can discuss. The fire chief, when he comes back, is going to kind of discuss his reasons on the fire side, but I can just discuss briefly some of the EMS safety concerns. Response times. Response time is obviously affected by the location of the station, but equally affected by personnel at the station and by building a new station and a bigger station that will obviously affect our ability to respond more quickly. We'll be able to have more people in the station and be able to get out in a more timely fashion. Health and first responder performance. We'll talk about this, and the fire chief will go in depth to the reason for health concerns at the station, especially the fire apparatus and the carbon that they emit, and just the concerns for his firefighters and them donning and doffing their gear and getting dressed. And then changes in the fire and EMS district over the years, and fire chief and probably commission members can speak more to this than I can. The changes in the district and the growth in the district, business growth and residential growth, and what that district looks like today and what it's going to look like in the future versus what it has looked like. Security, we could go into detail about that as well, and we will through some of the additional slides. And then ISO rating, and the fire chief can speak to what, if any, effect ISO would have, or the station would have on ISO, excuse me. So we have safety. We'll go into the new standards for fitness and minimum requirements for fire stations. I'm going to let the fire chief speak more in depth to this, but I can just touch on it. New standards for physical fitness for actually our paramedics and EMTs, whether they're volunteer, paid on call, or full-time or part-time. We have new standards. The new standards require physical fitness, and we actually have a pre-employment physical fitness test for all of our responders, because it's obviously very important that our responders are fit. They have to be able-bodied and capable to perform the duties of a firefighter and an EMT or EMS provider. So obviously we need to have them to be able to stay in their best possible physical shape. And that's the reason why we would want to talk about, and we will talk about, physical fitness and a physical fitness workout facility, gym facility, in order to keep our firefighters and our EMS personnel healthy and safe. Also, the minimum requirements for EMS and fire personnel have increased. The firefighter physical fitness requirements through the NFPA have continued to go up. The requirements have been raised year after year. And we'll go more in depth with that. Storage of turnout gear, I'll let the fire chief speak about the turnout gear. Decontamination facilities, we at EMS need decon facilities as well. We use that to decon from critical calls where we might have exposures, and the firefighters are equally in need of this. We do not have this at the current station, and according to OSHA and according to a lot of the other new requirements, we need to make sure that we have these decon facilities available for our personnel. Response time, lots of different things to discuss about response time. Current apparatus bay, I'm going to let the fire chief talk about that more in depth. Current facility has no accommodations for sleeping rooms. This is something that I want to really spend just a couple minutes on. Currently, our EMS personnel are across the street in an apartment that we rent monthly. Our EMS personnel are obviously paid to be there. They're paid by the district and by the district residents. And we just don't have room for them at the station. There are no sleeping quarters. There are no appropriate private bathrooms for male and female. In order for them to get dressed in the middle of the night when the alarm goes off, or any time for that matter, and in order for them to sleep in a private quarters, which I've heard from several responders are like, my wife or my husband or or girlfriend or significant other would be most comfortable if I'm sleeping in a separate room from someone else, and we respect that and understand that. And that is modern day fire stations and EMS stations. They have that privacy in place for a reason. Our current facility just does not have accommodations for that. Another thing I think it's important to touch on in this this bullet point is that even though we have paid staff in-house and they're at the apartment across the street, we can only get those responders to that station in about 3 to 4 minutes on average, which again affects our ability to respond as quickly as we would like. In modern day fire and EMS stations, the responders are right there in the station, staying right there in the station. Average response time with firefighters and EMS personnel in the station would be 1 minute. Because we're across the street, have to cross State Highway 12, whether it's daytime, nighttime, and no matter the season, obviously that can slow us down. Our responders sometimes will try to get in their icy cars and try to scrape off their windshields quick enough to get across the street and respond to the ambulance, and that poses a delay and a problem as well. So we really need to look at this. Response time is extremely important because time is so important in emergencies. A fire doubles and triples in size in just a couple minutes. A stroke, or some call it a brain attack, and brain tissue begins to be lost permanently in just a couple minutes. Heart attacks and myocardial infarctions, heart muscle damage begins to occur in just a couple minutes. And those couple minutes that we're spending getting our responders across the street is precious time for property and for patients and for those that need us. So definitely need to consider that when you're making a decision about the station. I talked about the apartment, and then firefighters. I'll let the fire chief talk about this a little bit more. Firefighters are all volunteer, which is true, and response times are dependent on the distance from the station. So obviously firefighters come from their house. Some of our EMS personnel also respond from our house. This has to be a consideration as we move forward and as we prepare for the future and look at building a bigger and more modern station where we can have some volunteer staffing in-house, where we can have more paid staffing in-house that can respond more quickly to the emergencies in the district. Fire chief's going to talk about physical fitness a little bit more, but I'll hit on it again. Our current physical fitness facility is shared. If you haven't seen it, you need to come down and see where we work out and where our responders work out. Space is very limited, and performance is tied to training together as a team. So fire and EMS train together, and Cambridge area EMS trains together, and regional departments train together. We have regional trainings, statewide trainings. We just don't have, and these are continuing education trainings, we don't have the facilities that are large enough to train as a unified, even fire and EMS team. So changes in the fire district, could you, Mr. Cook, speak to that possibly, and maybe talk about history, from what you know? And
Well, it's been 40 years since the original footprint of the fire station was established in Cambridge, and I believe the cost was something in the neighborhood of $400,000 or something like that. That's a long time ago, and they have remodeled a few times, and they've done some important work. 50% of that money that it costs to do the fire station was donated, 50% was property tax. So we go from, $200,000 in property taxes 40 years ago to $6 million today, and brings us into this century where we need to be. So is that for us? My mic working for you?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's all about, here's the way I like to look at it, and I'll tell you this, and I'm the Town of Christiana chairman, so I can't promote anything. I get in trouble, I guess. Well, Stanley said I won't get in trouble, but I would. But so my position is that this isn't about Cambridge. This isn't about the 5 municipalities, just about us. We're a regional organization, and we support each other on a regular basis. So, and I'm going to do a presentation about a fire that we had at my property, and I'll talk to you about 5 different fire departments showing up. The EMS people were there. There was 5 or 6 different sheriff people there. ATF was there. U.S. Marshals were there. Everybody was there helping. I wasn't home. And Stanley was there. And so a lot of people show up to help. This isn't about what comes out of the Cambridge Fire Station. This is a much bigger issue than that. Hey, Mark, this is a much bigger issue than that. And you need to think of this as I'll say, I'm not going to say globally, but I think you need to think of it as a regional footprint that we need to cover. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And yes, it's important that we deal with this issue in Cambridge, where the fire station is. But when we need help, everybody shows up, and when they need help, we show up for them. So it's just much bigger than Cambridge. And I know we think about it in terms of Cambridge. When I was a kid, every business on Main Street was a fireman. When the whistle blew, they got out and they ran. And they went to the fire station, got in their fire trucks, and they took off and they did their thing. Those days are over. People that live in town don't, during the day anyways, they aren't able to get to the fire because they're working in Madison. So everything's different than it was 40 years ago. And the fire department guys, the EMT guys, the paramedics have all done a great job using what we have. We've just outgrown it. So it's time to do something different. The proposal here is, in my mind anyways, it isn't about, I'm not interested in the brick and mortar at this point. I'm interested, is the community willing to support us on a safety question for the referendum? And if they are, then we will do a cost plus not to exceed building project. Maybe it's less than $6 million. It won't be more than $6 million. That's all we got, 6.3 or whatever it is. And the other thing I want to touch base on, Stanley, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but in the town of Christiana, we don't tax. So we have other revenue sources. So in the town of Christiana, about 1.2 or 1.3 million, whatever it is that our contribution is going to be, isn't really part of this referendum question. So the building, from a tax burden point of view, goes from 6.3 million to 5 million. But the town of Christiana is going to get their sources from someplace else. So purely from a tax point of view, the number is really 5 million. And I know that's complicated, but that's the truth. So, and I wanted to say that because on all of the documents that we put out, we talk about cost per $100,000 of assessed value, equalized value. So that's really not true in the town of Christiana. That'll be the number that we end up paying, but it's not. That's not a tax. It's not. There has no tax impact at all on the people that live in the town of Christiana. So I needed to say that because everybody asks me constantly about what does that mean. Well, it means that if you live in the town of Christiana, this fire station doesn't cost you anything. But from a tax burden point of view, it goes from 6.3 to 5. Community-wide, if you look at it regionally. Okay? So, and that's a real number, and we can't just skim over that and not talk about it. Are we going to do my video?
Yeah, at the end.
At the end. Where are we?
We have about 10 minutes left between you two for making your comments
Sure.
before including the video.
Okay, we'll skip that one. That's the ISO. Terry's back, so I think we should
Wonderful.
give Terry,
Oh, there you go, Terry.
we'll give Terry the balance of the time then in the 10 minutes before we go to that. Okay, we're going to ask people to speak a little bit louder. So Terry, you're pretty soft-spoken, so. And I apologize, Terry, but it didn't save the changes that we made. So you just pick out in order of what you want. Paul covered that, so I'll jump to your thing here, and you can just
Well,
put them
the
in the order.
biggest issue we have as far as right now is the response from the current facility. The facility is way too small. We have we're pumped full of fire trucks in there, and we do actually have an apparatus in there that's parked. We have to pull one apparatus out before we can pull the other one out. We do have our boat in the garage in the rear of the property there. So we have people getting dressed with their turnout gear right next to a running apparatus. There's a whole bunch of firefighters that have to get dressed with the truck running right there. The traffic in and out of the station, the people get there at different times because we live different distances away from the station, and we have fire trucks coming out while people are coming in. We're using the same driveway. The fire gear is right in the apparatus bay. They've come to find out that the exhaust from the apparatus tends to accumulate in the firefighter's gear, and it causes a possibility with carcinogens causing the cancer later on in life. So not only do we fight the carcinogens from the new building materials that are being used nowadays that burn much hotter, much quicker, much more dangerous for the firefighters, it's also, we have the fire gives you carcinogens, and then also the station does too now. So we do try to clean the fire gear right after we have a fire, but it takes a while because if you have 10, 15, 20 people that need their gear washed, it takes a good week to get that all done. So,
And the new facility would give you a decontamination area.
correct, yeah. We have, right now, there's no area in the station where we can take our tools that have been in the fire to rinse them off, to clean them, soap them down. And some of that gets done in the workout area. We do have to take the hose to the hose tower, and there's the hose washers in the hose tower, and so that all that dirty hose gets hauled right through the workout area.
And if you wanted to speak to any of the response time issues at all, Paul covered quite a bit of it.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk.
5 minutes.
I try not to touch on your firefighter, stuff about especially response time related to volunteer.
Yeah, we're all volunteer. We come from work or home or wherever we're at. So it does take a little time for us to get there. So we're not, the EMS is right at the station. They get out quicker than we do. And there's, and like the other night we had the freezing rain a week ago Monday night, and if we would have had a nice place to house some firefighters, we'd have been able to get out. We did have a call on the interstate that night with a vehicle rolled over, and it took a while for us to get to the station due to the roads. If we would have had a decent facility with rooms, we could have had people stay at the station, and we got the truck out a lot quicker.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt for a second, just to stay on schedule, assuming we're going to stay on schedule.
Okay.
We'd like to ask Mark to give us 5 minutes of his remarks, and then we'll do the video. We'll find out how many people have questions, and then maybe we'll make more time for some of the presentation. So at this point, Mark, if you'd like to.
Give me just a second to get it.
I'm giving her just a
You're
second.
giving her just a second? Okay, great.
1, 2.
So
I heard you.
Terry, how is everything okay at where
Yeah,
the call was that
we're
you
fine.
made today?
What's that?
The call that you just came
You're
back
on that
from,
right now?
is everything all right?
Yep, everything's fine.
Great.
There it is.
Down.
Down? Right there. Okay, thank you.
I think you got to go to slideshow now.
Thank you. There we go. Okay. Beautiful.
So I have a unique situation where we actually had a fire on my property on June 1st. I talked a little bit about that earlier, but I have a presentation, and I have a few series of really short videos, but I have a security system at my house, 14 cameras, every single thing that happened during that fire was recorded. Turned out to be really nice because law enforcement liked it. So this is my property. I think it's like 2:20 in the afternoon, something like that. My wife is home. Those are my sheds. This is my camera that looks from the corner of my garage out so I can see my gas pumps and stuff when I'm out of town and stuff like that. But, so the next slide here is like a minute later. So this thing is keying on motion. So it sees the smoke and
Up here.
yeah, you can, and so the camera kicks on. It's like 2 minutes or maybe not even 2 minutes after that first slide. So this one will go, and then it'll stop, and there'll be another slide. And I took them out of order. It's actually like 8 hours of video, so they only gave me 5 minutes, so that's all you're going to get. So that's George Wog, and he works for me at the township. And
Wow.
he's there right away. My wife called the fire department, and she panicked. And they couldn't understand what she was talking about, so they finally figured out they had to shut her off, disconnect her phone, however they do that from the fire station. They called her back, she answered the phone. They figured out that it was a fire. State troopers drove through the interstate fence, came down. I took all that stuff out of here. But a state trooper came in, drove up here. But by the time they got here, this is what's going on. So George is close. He works at the town hall. He's there. This fire started. Minutes later, this is what you got. You want to go to the next one? So when I talked earlier, I said this, we got to think about our fire services and EMS services as regional. You see it says Edgerton Fire Department.
Deerfield.
Deerfield. 5 different fire departments showed up for that fire. And that's what happens every single time that we have an emergency. We have heroes rolling in from everywhere. So the idea that Cambridge is an island, that's just not true. We help each other. It's much bigger than that. And everybody has to invest in it. That's our duty. So you guys have to decide when you go to the polls, how much money do we spend? You know, is the duty that we have, are you willing to support that, yes or no? Whatever you guys decide to do, you know, we just live with that. We'll work around it. So there's a shed behind that tree that you can't see. So I've been in business for over 40 years. Every single thing that I own was in those buildings. Every single thing, including my trucks, my trailers, my offices, all my computer, everything. It's all gone. Joe was there. I mean, it was a mess, and I walked in at the end of it. And when I walked in, I got surrounded by law enforcement. And it was interesting because they still don't know what started the fire. So I cut out, obviously, a whole bunch, and I think the next slides are just photographs, and I'll talk about them. But my big message is, this isn't about Cambridge Fire Department. This is about a regional group of heroes servicing us. And in order to do that safely and efficiently, they need some modifications to the system. That's my message. And again, here's another example. Everybody you can imagine was at my house that day except for me. And they saved my house. They put water on the gas tanks. You can just keep clicking through it. So they kept water on the gas tanks so that they didn't blow up because they're both full. There was 300 gallons of diesel, 300 gallons of gasoline, 10 feet from a fire. My LP tanks were blowing up. It sounded like cannons going off. I got all that recorded. This is what it looks like after the fact. The fire started. In this building on this side, that's my pickup truck that I had restored. The stuff on the outside, those are portable offices that just melted. This whole building just melted.
Whoops.
Yeah, we don't want that slide up there.
Okay.
But anyway, it was a total destruction of every single thing that I had. But I'm so grateful that the fire department was there to save my house and help my wife because I was not home. When I rolled in, it was all done. They were rolling up hoses. Terry was there. Joe was there. Stanley was around. In fact, I talked to Stanley on the phone when I was in Eau Claire working on a lawsuit. And I said, take care of my wife till I get home, and he did. He did, and I really do appreciate that. Every single thing that they do, every time they go out, is what heroes do. So we have to decide, are we going to support them in their efforts at the level that we want, or something different? But the question in the referendum is yes or no. Whatever that is, Mark McNally's here, he's the president of the village. He'll have to make those hard decisions at that point, just like I do as the town chairman. So, and these guys here are the ones that need to have a facility that they can work out of safely and keep their people trained and keep the skill levels where they need to be, because they really are heroes. Put the last picture up, would you?
The last picture?
Yeah.
Kiddos.
So the reason we rebuilt, I didn't have two buildings, I didn't have enough. That's all right, it doesn't matter. The reason that we rebuilt is because I have 5 grandkids. Most important thing in my life, right? So I put a picture of them in here. And
There you go.
so that's why we rebuilt. That's why we're so thankful that the house was saved and nobody got hurt. This is the reason that we all do what we do, right? Little kids. So I just think that, whatever you guys want to do, whatever you decide to do at the polls, it's up to you, and I'll respect that. But we do need some changes. And I'm not here to say that, the bathrooms are going to be blue. I don't care about any of that. What I want is cost not to exceed, whatever the referendum is, and we won't exceed that number, but we will build a building that is need-based, based on what the firefighters and the EMS group needs. That's what we will do. Fighting about all those other things just doesn't make any sense to me. And paying a guy $50,000 to give us a set of plans so that we don't have to argue about colors, I'm not willing to spend $50,000 for that. I want to know if the people are interested in supporting what we're trying to do here or not. Yes or no question at the referendum. Fair enough? Fair enough.
Well, I'm going to jump in here now. For those who weren't here earlier, I'm Melanie Smythe. I've been asked to help facilitate the conversation. And we didn't get through all of the presentation, but let's see how many questions there may be. And then if we run out of questions, we can come back and touch on some of the things, or perhaps the questions will then take us to some of the rest of the presentation. So does anyone have a question? Would anyone like to ask a question? Yes, ma'am. Could you please state your name, and if you wouldn't mind coming up to this microphone, because we are being recorded, so that people can go back and look at this at a later time.
My name is Becky Borgart, and I live
Can you speak up, Becky? Thank you.
My name is Becky Borgart, and I live in the village of Cambridge. So if there is a no vote, is there like a backup plan? Like, if this gets turned down, we are going to immediately get the ventilation that the trucks need so that they're not breathing that air, figure out how to get a decontamination center. Like, these people are risking their lives for us. We can't ask them to risk their family with what they take home. And so, is there a backup plan?
Great question.
Well, I guess we just have to go back to what we did last time. The referendum failed last April, and then by May we were meeting again with the public, and we'll just have to
Speak up,
regroup.
please.
We'll have to regroup and start over.
I mean,
There's
like,
no-
is there a way that we can make it another referendum question? Like, if this doesn't pass, we are going to spend this money and do this.
Well, it's too late to add another question to the referendum. They had to be in end of January, I think. So there's nothing like that, Becky, at this point.
Okay, also, do you guys have the information for the grants that were released on the 15th and the 17th?
I do not.
Okay.
Which grants are you referring to?
The ones
there's
that
a
Dr.
rural,
Evers released,
Okay, yeah.
the stabilization
there
and the
is an
expansion
EMS grant
for
funding.
EMS.
Yes.
Yes.
We will be applying.
Perfect. Awesome, thank you.
I'd like to add to that a little bit. I mean, essentially, if this referendum is a no, you guys have to start over. So it's not a matter, from my point of view, and looking at it from outside of the community, because I live in Germantown, is that this is not a matter of, for you guys, it's a matter of when you're going to do this, because it seems to me that your facilities are out of date, and it's a problem for you as a community. So it's a matter of when, it's not a matter of if that makes sense. So the referendum will just be repackaged, and what is it that you're going to accept? What do you want for yourselves? I mean, it's for yourselves. And that's, is it this time or is it another time? I mean, that's what I think part of the question is that has to be answered by each person. So, anybody else have a question?
Could I comment on her question
Absolutely.
just to finish? So I think no plan B. So I just want to be crystal clear. No plan B at all at this time. And then as far as additional funding and additional resources, I think the community deserves to know what the fire chief and I apply for each year for funding that helps take the burden off of the taxpayer. There is at least 3 grants that every year EMS can apply for through the state and through federal. And as far as I know, my predecessor, the person before me for the last few years, has applied for those grants every year. Unfortunately, with the fire side of things as well, when we put in for those grants, we're competing against thousands of other departments typically. And so we can apply for those, and I know the fire chief and fire department has done so as well, and we have. And sometimes we're awarded those grants, and sometimes we are not.
So I did look it up, that these grants, only 152 stations are eligible for Cambridge.
And we are one of them, so great research. Because we're a rural EMS service, we're classified as rural. So that additional funding that the governor supplied in this last budget is available to Cambridge area EMS. So we will be applying, and hopefully we will be selected for that and get those additional funds. We did apply to that last year, and we should find out any time about whether we were awarded that and how much that will be. So we have to continue to be diligent as the fire chief and EMS chief. We have to continue to be diligent on those grants and apply for them, even if we may only get 1 out of every however many we apply for, because again, that lessens the tax burden to the citizens and helps us be able to fund the department, be able to get firefighters new gear, be able to, some of them are even staffing grants that we can apply for. So, good question.
Okay. Any other questions? Please join us.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. My name is Tom Brown. I'm from Oakland. I want to start with saying I support doing something for the EMS and the fire station. I volunteered to be on the subcommittee from the last referendum to try and find cost savings and et cetera to improve what they have. They really need to be improved. Terry did a great job on walking me through, holding my hand. We had hour and a half where you were walking me around the fire station and showing me all the opportunities. That being said, there's some things about this I still don't understand. The 6.3 million, that's a not to exceed number.
Yes.
How did we come up with that number?
I'll give it a shot. So we're a year
Can you
from,
speak up, Mark, please?
Yeah.
Zoom is having a hard time hearing you.
we're a year out of our last referendum, and the inflation rate is pretty high. So we know that the 6.5 million is probably more realistic to 7.5 because of the economy changing and I mean the shortage of materials and the shortage of labor and all that kind of stuff. Things just cost more. So when we sat down and we talked about the numbers, there was a motion made at the Fire Commission by the President, Gene, to go with 6.3, and it was fundamentally based on it's really 7.4, 7.5. We're going to go to 6.3 because we don't have a choice, but it is going to be a scaled back building. And just recently we've kind of made the decision that, heck, let's go with a 6.3 referendum question, cost plus not to exceed 6.3 million, and then let's bring the paramedics and the fire department people in and take the ideas that you guys all put together and apply them to a building and get it built. So that's the reason the numbers are going to agitate people, because it looks like we only dropped 200,000. We didn't, and if we waited till next year, it would be 8 million, the way things are going. So you can't get ahead of that. And I'm not saying vote yes, vote no. I'm just saying these are the facts, and costs are runaway right now. And if we want to build a building, it's going to be in that $6 million range.
But what are we using for our basis for that 6.3.
Yeah.
I mean, are we using the stuff that we got from Keller as our bottom line, or are we saying 6.3, we're starting all over?
Well, there's two answers to that question, and it's a trick question, and you know it, so I appreciate it.
So it's a hard question.
Your question or my question?
Your question's a hard question. So, the committee that was formed, that you sat on, and there was a representative from each municipality, the 5 municipalities on that committee, and it's a bunch of hardworking people from the community came in. But they came back to the Fire Commission with 3 different options. So we knew that we had a hybrid thing going on, and we weren't going to get agreement from the committee, we weren't going to get agreement from anybody on every single thing that needed to be done. But what we have is an understanding of what the needs are based on what those people reported back to us. So at the Fire Commission meeting, we came up with we used the square footage number from the original project, and we applied it to all 3 of those variables that you guys presented with us. And to get the one that, the Gene wanted, and because he was in constant contact with everybody that was on that committee, he said to do the highest level of the 3 that were presented, we're going to need this much money. So I'll back up. At the township level, my board said 5 million. I went to that meeting with 5 million. The motion was made and seconded to go with 6.3 based on the information that we were provided with that night. I went back to my board and they said, okay, let's go with 6.3, but that's it, no more. And that's how the cost not to exceed comes in. So does that answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay.
Well, maybe I can add, but Tom, the 6.5, if we would have took that same plan in November, we got figures back that plan would have been 7.1 to 7.2. And so
Why is that? Due to inflation?
due to the construction cost increase, inflation, and interest rates.
So it went from okay.
And so the 6.3 originally would have been like a 5.8 or 5.9. But so in the time frame, it's jumped that much. And if we wait longer, it's going to.
Yeah, and I understand that, but my concern is if we're saying 6.3, that's it, because the inflation rate is so high, are you going to get everything that you need?
Oh, no. See, that 6.5 a year ago was a 30 to 40 year plan. This 6.3 is going to be a
Next week plan.
10 to 15 year plan.
Yeah.
And
Can you also talk about the change that you've recently made about going forward with who you will be working with or how you will do that? Because there was a change in your decision making recently, as I understand it, regarding Keller and how to manage the process from here on out.
you want to hand that, Mark? Or?
Yeah, I think the consensus is in the
That's
community.
going to be my next question.
Oh, sorry.
Well done.
You want to ask it? Yeah.
Let's, we're getting comments that it's hard to hear, so I apologize.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, maybe
Maybe
face
you could-
the screen.
Or go stand by the board. There we go.
Can do that too.
Sorry.
Pretty old.
Oh, come on.
Is there a mic over
Might
here?
need to stretch.
There's a mic over here?
Yeah.
Okay. So, ask the question, please.
The question is, all the previous work was done by Keller, and we used all of their numbers and all of their costs based on what they told us.
Right.
Okay. Moving forward, are they still in this, or is this going to be a new proposal for others to bid on, or are we relying on them to do the work for 6.3 or less?
I think that I'm not exactly sure what all the language is, and I'm only speaking for myself because the whole fire commission's not here. But I think it's going to be opened up for competition. Now, you can make an argument that Keller's job is to organize all the builders and stuff, and they may very well end building it. And I think the fire department was very happy with the design that they had. I'm not willing to box myself in on one person right now. I want to know if there's somebody else out there that has a different idea or that might be able to do it cheaper. And that's what my goal is. I know that we're going to have a restricted budget. I want to make sure that we get the most bang for the buck. And if Keller can do it, great. I know they build a nice building. I'm okay with that.
Well, my concern is that there's no way for me or anybody else who lives in the district to know if there's been bids put out to subcontractors, or this is Keller just assigning subcontractors that they've used in the past. I don't have any way to know that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fair question, and my understanding is it's cost per square foot based on an average, and that isn't a real cost. So when we did our analysis of the 3 projects that you guys sent back to us, it was just a square foot number. So I sat there at the meeting and I did all the calculations as we were being told, and they all just made sense. It was so much a square foot regardless of what you did. And in the real world, that doesn't always work. So it's a great question, Tom, and I don't really know the answer to that. Again, I'm not speaking for the rest of the board. I'm just saying we have to look really hard at how we're going to build this thing and get the most bang for the buck.
So it would be appreciated, and I don't think time's going to let you do it. I'd really like to have that question answered before I decide what I'm going to vote on the referendum.
So your specific question about who's going to build the building?
No, how is the process of managing the building going to happen?
Yeah,
Because that's critical,
it is. We have an architect.
and
Yeah.
she'll tell you it's critical.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So,
Can I say what we
Yeah.
talked about the other day?
Sure.
Okay, so one of the ideas that we talked about was that, okay, this is a perfect point in your process to stop working with Keller and say, thank you very much, but we're going to start over. We're going to send out an RFP. We're going to have a new contract bid so that it's possibly a new group of designers and a new group of contractors, or maybe it's Keller if they win it. But it'll be designed differently. It may still be a construction management process, but if it's set up as a cost plus, not to exceed, what that means is that they've got to come in within that dollar amount, and they have to get liens, and they have to show who all the subs are and how much they're being paid, and so you have clarity into the dollars that are spent. But before that, you can also describe how subcontractors are bid throughout the process. You can also design how you expect subcontractors to be able to participate in the contract. So it's all in how you write that RFP that goes out now that we're going from concept to design development, which is where the nitty-gritty gets worked out, and then construction documents, which are the permit and the construction subcontractor bidding and vendor bidding and supplier bidding projects or processes and costs. And then you actually go into construction. So you're still at the very beginning of this process from a design standpoint, because you've only got a concept drawing, which is just paper and ink. Yeah.
so I guess the information you shared about Christiana having a 1.2 that gets taken off of the 6.3 for the rest of us for our tax rolls.
Your tax roll obligation won't change, but the cost of the building to the taxpayers, and I'm looking at it regionally, is $5 million, not 6.3.
Right, and I think that is a critical piece of information that we should have had last time. And maybe it was out there and I just didn't hear it.
It's
But
just,
I was basing it on the 5 or 3, whatever we had last time.
it's still real money, Tom. It's just it's not tax money. So, and town of Christiana hasn't taxed anybody for 15 years. 16 years.
Yeah.
Guess I'm moving to Christiana.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could all change, but that was one of Stanley's deals. He fixed that for us.
So we're gonna be asked to vote on the referendum, knowing basically it's 6.3, and we'll figure it all out later.
I don't know how else to do it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can do that. I
Yeah.
like that better than what we tried to do the first time.
And you'll be on the committee.
Fine with me.
He was a great committee member.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you for your good
thanks.
questions. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, Tom.
There's a chat question, and it is, how much time would be added to the project if we decided to go out to bid for a new architect, etc.? And that is from somebody. I can't read it that far. Well, you have to write the RFP, which means a group of people getting together and deciding what is important to include in that RFP. And then you have to issue it and let enough time for people to be able to put a package back. At the best case, it's probably 6 weeks. It might be 2 months. It depends on you and who's on that team and how quickly you want to get it done, in my view. So I would say probably 6 to 10 weeks, depending upon how motivated you are to get it done.
Yeah. And I think Keller's got the edge because they have everything in front of them, and I would expect that they were going to be pretty competitive. But we'll just wait and see what happens.
Right.
See, originally the project, if voted yes last April, would have been started. The bids would have went out over the documents would have been all formed. Bids went out in the fall, and they would have started construction in March here. And now they're hoping that if we can pass the referendum and get the construction documents, or get the I'm not over, but the
Construction documents, yeah.
documents formed and get the bidding done and hopefully start construction early to late fall and get the building enclosed, the addition enclosed, so that they can work through the winter.
Yeah, I mean, you can do things like set it up on a fast track so that the foundations are concentrated on first, and then you do the enclosure. You don't worry about what the bathrooms look like yet, but you know where they're going to go, and that you have sequential issuances of drawings that are then sub or bid in sequence, so that you're not bidding everything all at once, and then just sort of the last guy is twiddling his thumbs waiting for 12 months until he does his thing. So there's many ways that you can design the contracts and the delivery of the project. I'm not so up on, I'm more involved in commercial projects, so I don't know what the limitations are from a municipal standpoint, but there are certain restrictions. But you have to think about the delivery of the project, which is one way of speeding things up, which is a way to beat inflation and the potential for continued inflation, as well as just managing the process. And so that would be something that you probably should have someone thinking about right away.
I have another good question.
Yeah.
So, can you say we need it done by this date so that we don't have to pay for another year of apartments as soon as this is over?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm guessing you can say whatever you want. Whether they can get it done or not, I don't know the answer.
Or can we work something out? See if we can work something out with the landlords that they're not going to make us sign another year contract
see.
or lease.
Well, that'd be up in the air, with the delay in materials and things being made nowadays. That I don't know how they could. I mean, somebody's got to be a lot smarter than I am to figure
Well,
that
I
out.
mean,
but-
even if we say, okay, we're going to give it 2 years, or whatever, a year and a half, but we have a year left, can we try to negotiate something?
It was supposed to be like a 15-month build, 15 to 16 to 17-month build on the original plan.
And how much of our lease do we have left?
I don't know what the lease is. Do you sign a yearly lease?
Yeah, annual lease.
January to January? Or?
Good question.
Any other questions?
So I could say that this is a remodel project too. This isn't a flat piece of ground that we're going to start building from scratch on, which is much easier. So the remodel makes it a little bit more challenging, and all the unknowns that when you get into, start opening walls up and start ripping ceilings out, you don't really know what you're going to run into. And I did work construction, so I actually can say that. Remodels are much harder So cost not to exceed will be interesting, but it's the right way to do it for the taxpayers.
Okay, we do have a few questions that came in here, unless somebody else has one right now in the audience.
Just a comment, if I could. I've played with this project this is the start of the 5th year that I've been involved, and we don't really have time to play pussyfoot with the health, safety, and welfare of our volunteers. We need to get this done. And if we don't pass the referendum, I don't know what you're gonna do. The commission's just gonna have to go back and do their job and do it and take care of all these problems. But we cannot get along without putting up some addition, because as Terry indicated, our water rescue, some of that stuff is in the garage behind the station. Well, how long have you got when you've got a boatload of people tipped over in Ripley, Koshkonong, Hope, Mud, or Cedar? How long have you got to play with the lives of a half a dozen people in a boat that somebody stupidly turned over? These things need to be put together. There's no reason to delay this. It becomes somewhat of a morals problem, because how can you sit there and say you're going to allow someone to die simply because you don't want to produce a facility and equipment to take care of them? I mean, this gets, well, our way we call it El Stupido. But the thing is, I ask that they move forward quickly, and if somebody wants to vote no on the referendum, and I've been playing with people that voted no in the last April referendum, not a single defendable reason to vote no, not one. And I'm not hard to get along with.
Yes. That would be a lie on camera.
But this is a very drastic need. In last year's referendum, there wasn't a single want in that whole project. Was it going to be a lot of money? Well, of course it's a lot of money, but why do we go to the bar and pay $8 for a stupid cocktail? Why are we paying $43,000 to $45,000 for a new vehicle? Why are we paying $11 for a damn steak? I know, because I like getting paid for the beef. But
11?
Yeah, where do
Where
you
do you go? Okay.
So I implore the people to accept the responsibility for taking care of our heroes. It's no big deal. We've done it since 1906, TJ?
02.
02. Because when they need something, and I sat on the commission for a couple of years, I guess, wasn't it? But what they needed, and I, for one, sat at that table and said, if you need it, we'll get it. There weren't any wants. Well, they had some wants. We said, well, can you get along without? Yeah. So we bought engines, we bought equipment, whatever they needed to take care of our people and our property. Because when I first got on the commission, I think we had a district that was at about $19 million, the whole district. Now it's $500 million. People are complaining because why do you have to have all of these big pieces? Rolling stock. Well, if you're going to do care of a $20 million horse, you do it with so much, or you're going to take care of the $500 million horse, you better have some better equipment, because that horse needs a little more equipment. So it's not a nonsense thing at all. And some of this stuff should have been taken care of 20 years ago, should have been started on. Because when Bannon was chief, he came into the commission, he said, you don't have to rush with it, but this is what you're going to be looking at in a few years. That was some full-time, that was equipment, that was changing some stuff in the station. That station is a health hazard. Do you want your volunteers who are willing to give life, limb, and health and safety for their families because you don't want to pay for updating and then putting on an addition? Out there as Norwegians, we kind of take it straight up. Get the job done. And if you gotta wear your old apron for one more winter, that's the way it's gotta go. That's enough of that, I'm starting to run.
Thank you.
So just a little history here. We actually started this project, we started talking about the project in the late fall of 2015. And we looked at 3 different properties trying to put together a project with a plan that would be reasonable. The cost was prohibitive. There was over $10 million for these each of these three different areas. And then it was thankfully Stanley came one day and he says, well, I think you had talked to Pommy. And so we, through Stanley, were able to get the Pizza Pit property. So in the center location where the station is now is the best spot to have the station. We could have been way out of town or on this side, and the response times have been quite a bit longer for the volunteers. And so Stanley is the one that actually got the Pizza Pit property involved here, and Pommy was very gracious to us for selling Christiana the property. So that's how this has kind of come to where we are right now.
We have another question.
Yeah. What is the average value of a home in the village of Cambridge, and how much is estimated per $100,000 in the village?
The average, this district, and that's, I've got to go back to my DOR times, but we should be at about $185,000 for average residence in the fire district.
Per year?
That's
Per building, you said.
estimated value of.
Oh, value, I'm sorry. 108, okay.
I can answer the second part. I can't answer the first part. I'd have to go back and look at our property tax rolls. I believe the levy rate here was $60 per 100,000.
We have
I know that the average home is more than $100,000.
I think it's in there.
And that's
Six-
based on
60 is
equalized
correct, so.
value and not assessed value.
So 275,000 is the average, you think? Three- Okay. And so that would equate to,
So we have for Oakland $51 per 100,000, Christiana 54, Rockdale 66, Cambridge 60, and Town of Lake Mills 6 per 100.
See, the one thing with the Lake Mills in Oakland, the whole district gets assessed for the building, not just the part that's in the Cambridge Fire District. Same with Lake Mills. I think we have like 7% of their area in our district. That's why their numbers so. But the whole town of Lake Mills has to come up with that.
One follow-up.
There's another question that was sent in that says, sorry. Is the fire and EMS district growing?
No, it's been the same since I've been on here, as far as I know.
You mean the size of the district, right?
The district isn't growing, but the
Population.
Yeah, but the size or the square miles has not changed.
So our current boundaries are the similar footprint that it has been for many years. However, the population continues to grow. I don't know if we know what percentage population growth per each community or if we know numbers, but I know it continues to grow. So our call volumes continue to grow. What was your percentage of call volume increase this past? I know you released that just recently.
Well, it went up from 172 up to 185.
So there's call volume that's increased as well.
there's a follow-up to the estimated valuation question. So, and I think it's a question.
About
So
50 cents.
50 cents a day for the average homeowner is what it would equate to. from a dollar spent
For the village of
standpoint.
Cambridge.
For the village of Cambridge, okay.
Show me your map. No.
How much
Okay,
does
now
a cup of
going
coffee
back to
cost?
the district
Okay.
growing question. So the size of the district, meaning the square miles that it covers, is not growing. You have had an increase in calls, but there's also been development in parts of the fire district. Would either of you care to speak to that?
There's significant proposed development as well, from my understanding. You know, the chief, I think, has some comments about that.
Well, they listed here the bike trails at out at Camrock, and also the new bike trail that's heading up towards London and BB up there. They will bring in a bunch of people that have accidents. I mean, they do tip over on their bikes, and they do need EMS, and they need to be hauled out of a field and different things. There's 3 new apartment buildings out the Vineyards, which actually were where we were at tonight. So I think we've been out there 4 times. This is the 4th time we've been out there in this winter for different reasons. I assume everybody's seen the Dancing Goat Distillery with their rick house out on 134 going towards London there. They do have...
Can you explain what a rick house is?
Oh, the rick house is a wood-framed structure that holds barrels of alcohol or barrels of whiskey. And the current building out there that they completed last spring, I believe, is 5 stories tall with 8,000 barrels of whiskey, 53 gallons each. They're proposed for over the next 20 years to add 4 more buildings out there. The new buildings will be 6 stories with 24,000 barrels of whiskey, or 3 times as big as the current building. So there's a potential for the fire department and the EMS for things out there.
Does that change any type of equipment or processes that you would have to add or use?
Well,
because of
possibly
size?
we might have to get an aerial. It depends on what the...
Terry's being too mild. You will be required to have an aerial for a 6-story building, period.
Okay.
Why would we approve a 6-story building?
That's up to the village of Cambridge. They've been threatening to do this for about 5 years. They want a 4-story apartment building. Now they're talking about a 6-story whiskey storage shed.
Well, I mean, this whiskey storage shed is kind of a good move because we need the tax income. But besides that, I would like to know what is the probability if there is a fire that the Lions Club Reservoir will catch on fire if the wind is blowing due to those rig houses lining the Lions Club Reservoir.
Well,
How long would it take to get to Wolf Mini Warehouse?
Well, they have mitigation things out there. It's bermed for over twice the size of the volume that will come out. So everything should stay within the berm around each building. Each building will be bermed. Mike out there did a real nice job of going through what they've done, the lightning prevention. Lightning is the main cause of these types of buildings going on fire, and because they're...
Also, can you tell me if you know how much our property insurance is going to go up if we don't have a ladder truck due to the rig houses?
That I don't know right offhand. I don't know if it'll actually affect your property insurance all that much, but
I was told that it would raise our fire risk because of it sitting on that wooded area for the Lions Club. And then Wolf Mini Warehousing being right on the other side.
Yeah, supposedly if one of them start on fire, what we do is just prevent it from getting to the next ones. So we would let it burn. So it would burn. It would go down into the basement of the building and the berm around
So
it.
you don't need a ladder truck for this.
Well, no, we need a ladder truck to prevent the other 2.
Right, so I'm saying if we don't get a ladder truck because you guys don't get your expansion, how much is our insurance gonna go up? Because we're
questions.
Well,
that we
that's a
can
good
answer.
question. I don't know that they can answer that tonight, but let's write that down. And I think I mean, it's a question you guys as a community need to answer based on the people and the organizations that you have here. And
Yeah, I don't have an answer.
I just feel like 50 cents a day, are we gonna pay more than that in our insurance? Because we don't have.
We'll definitely look into that
Yeah.
and try to have an answer for that. One of the follow-ups that we were talking about was the proposed growth of the district as well, and I wanted to just ask, because I'm not exactly sure what the proposal is, but is there not a proposal on the table for a big development in Oakland area? I mean, I know that there has been proposals for that, and I know that commissioner's not here tonight, but I know that there has continued to be development in our district, and there will continue to be. I'm not, I can't speak to which district, whether it be the village or Oakland, but we have 5 communities. There will continue to be some form of development each year. Our call volume historically on the EMS side over the past few years has continued to increase, and it sounds like the same on fire department as well. So as we look at this station and look at the big picture and the needs, our call volume will continue to increase. The regional call volume will continue to increase, and then the needs of our responders will continue to increase. I think that was the point of the district, the growth, the population growth. Even if our boundaries do not grow, our population and the responses will grow. So.
well, one way you can somewhat monitor that is by developing relationships, if you don't have them already, with your planning and zoning organizations and monitoring permits issued, building permits. Those are good indicators of things coming. And whatever the business development or whatever the equivalent is in each of the towns, what they're doing to promote themselves and the types of businesses that they want to bring in. So are there master plans in place? Germantown is currently going through that process, trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. So,
And Oakland does have a very good one. And there is a proposed development. You were at, Terry, the chief was invited. It's a multi-use development over kind of in the area of A and 18. It would be retail and residential.
That's the one I'm
Yeah.
referring to.
So that's being looked at right now pretty aggressively. So, and then the new housing development over in the area by the Catholic Church.
Scott property
Scott property, thank you.
What district is that in?
That's here.
in the village.
Village, in Village. Okay.
So you covered the rick houses, the vineyard property, the bike trails, proposed Oakland, solar farm. So anyway,
With the solar farm comes a big battery that's going to be located not too far from where the elementary school is, out on whatever Clearbrew Road, and that'll be a challenge.
As long
But
as that was brought up,
yeah,
would there be any unusual or special equipment needed if by chance that development would happen?
there's a
Would have to be part of the
Yes.
EMS and fire department
Yes.
that have to acquire?
Yes.
NFPA would have very specific rules, and if you look at the proceedings that that we're involved with, a lot of that was spelled out by all the different experts on fire. It does change the dynamics of how the fire department would respond, how much access they have, and then what kind of special training do we need if we have trouble with the batteries. When the panels burn, I don't know if that's a big deal. It doesn't happen that often, but it's 3,000 acres of solar panels and a huge battery and hundreds of underground cables. So it's another level of exposure that we don't know the answers to your question, but it is real, and we do need to think about that. So that is part of the future of this community at some point. I know Oakland's already signed an agreement with a developer on some solar. There's a lot of pressure south of us. There's a lot of pressure north of us. There's going to be solar everywhere. And again, I'll go back to my regional position that safety and injuries and fires don't have boundaries. So all of those things are going to happen all around us. And whether you're for solar or not, it doesn't really make any difference. The reality is, if they build this thing, it changes how we're gonna have to do business. We have a power plant in the town of Christiana that Joe works at. That's a whole different, and I don't worry about that because it's kind of isolated, and Joe's out there, he can put the fire out. But that's a whole nother level of fire work that needs to be done that I don't have a lot of expertise on. And solar is really out there. I just don't know how we're going to deal with that.
So these big developments that are happening in like Cottage Grove, where they're putting in Amazon in their houses, is that something where like if that caught on fire, we would have to go there?
I'd be happy to speak to that on the EMS side, because we just had a conversation this week about that with our partners, Deer Grove EMS. The Amazon building and the building that is going on in the Cottage Grove area will have an impact on our services, because we are frequently backing them up just as they are backing us up. As Commissioner Mark has said numerous times, more often than not, on a daily basis in this area, we are backing each other up constantly on fire calls and EMS calls. So as another area nearby grows, so does our call volume and our responses. So Amazon is expected to be a large facility, as is the development that is going on around the Cottage Grove area. So that will impact our need to go in and back them up. Now they're addressing that within their own community, as well as a staffing study that we were mentioned in just recently, and trying to bolster their staff, full-time, part-time, and volunteer. But it will have an impact for sure.
So I have another question then. So if we have to be more readily available to them, do they have to pay you guys extra money for us going and helping them? Can you take that extra money and use it towards paying us?
Well, from the fire side, we have a mutual aid agreement throughout the county that they help us, we help them. There's no extra charge
Same
from
with
anybody
EMS.
to.
Somebody told me that we were paying a disgusting amount to rent the Deer Grove EMS when our EMS was down for a little bit.
Different situation. On a daily basis, mutual aid is used by the fire side and EMS side. No cost to the community, no cost for their community for us to respond. A little different situation, for example, if an ambulance was down for an extended period of time due to a staffing shortage, COVID outbreak, or otherwise. So different situations, but good question. But more often than not, no, those services are provided on the fire side and on the EMS side under mutual aid agreements. And we help each other out. That's why the regional outlook and approach is such a good one for us all to think about, myself included, because we really are a regional system. So.
Thank you.
Stanley?
Now I remember what that item was.
Okay.
ISO, it's been up there to be looked at, and nobody wants to discuss it because it's kind of an ugly old girl. But the ISO impact on our project and ISO for what she's talking about, ISO will come into factor the impacts on everything that we do in emergency services.
Can you explain what ISO is?
Heck no, it's something about insurance rates.
Okay.
Terry can.
Well, it's
Okay.
the Insurance Services Organization, which is an organization that comes around about every 5-6 years or so, and they go through our village.
All your rolling stock.
Yeah, so they look at the tower, the water tower, the mains in the ground, and how much water they can supply in a period of time. They go out and do hydrant flow tests, different things. They come into the fire station, and they see what kind of equipment we have, how old your engines are, how big your engines are, if you have a ladder truck, different things like that. They look at our response times, how many calls we have, how many people are available on that call. So they do come and do a quite an extensive study of the village, and then they go back and they give you a rating. So right now we have a rating of 4 in the village, and anywhere from 5 road miles from the station, we're at a 5. And it's anything beyond 5 road miles, it's automatically a 10, in which your insurance rates will go up at that point.
And this is a graph of what, from the Insurance Services Organization here. So an ISO score is calculated, as I understand it, 50% of it is based on the fire department and the overall health of the fire department, you know, training, number of employees, volunteers, maintenance, testing of crucial equipment, water supply, 40%, 10%, emergency communication systems, how well, you know, a fire department receives and responds to emergency calls. And then there's the last piece, which is really optional, and it talks about community risk reduction. So that would be fire prevention, education, et cetera. So that's how it technically is broken down. Now, how much it is applied to your insurance is how much it's applied to insurance.
They dictate your fire casualty insurance rates.
And yeah,
Because the classification that Terry was talking about, a 4 or a 5, 9 is buckets, and you put a bunch of buckets on the corner of every road, and that was your fire protection. But ISO is crucial, and you have to be nice to those boys, because they can shut you down just by not being happy. And your insurance, fire casualty rates will go up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more Zoom questions? Or Sheila, do you have a question that you can read out? Or does anyone in the audience have a question here?
here, I'll let you do that, Mike.
Sorry.
There's another one here that said, why don't you share staff, or do you share staff, and can firefighters become EMTs? I'm not sure what that, you know.
Multiple part question, sure.
Yeah.
We'll let the fire chief.
Well, yeah, we do have fire personnel that are on both departments, if that's what they're asking. Between EMS and the fire, we do certainly, and we hope that will continue and to actually improve in the future there. What was the second part?
Just,
Can firefighters be EMTs? And the
Yeah.
answer
Oh,
is
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So, and we do share service as well, and we do have several EMTs and paramedics that are also volunteer firefighters, and that is really the footprint. If you look around the country and you look around our area, a lot of those services are shared. Not only is it a personnel sharing, but it's also a cost sharing as well. So we don't have to look very far. Monona, City of Madison, and other communities within our area, they share those resources, and those are combination departments. So that certainly is a good question, and we already do some of that and look to do potentially more in the future. So.
Do you want to speak about the recruitment issue that you mentioned the other day to me?
Well, the new building would certainly help with recruitment and retention. We have a very mobile society nowadays. People don't stay in a place very long, but if we can get very nice, very good people and get them to come volunteer or work on the EMS as full-time people or part-time people, the building will go a long way, I think, in helping with that. It'll be a nice facility that they'll be safe, they'll be healthy, and they'll be able to do their job instead of getting a boat out of a rear locked garage. We can get it staged so we can get it out the door in 30 seconds instead of 3 to 4 minutes. There's a number of things with the training room, the workout area, the dorm facilities would be with privacy and things that they would appreciate. And you're going to be competing for people going down the road. There's a number of departments that are going full-time and stuff, and it'd be, this new building would really help with that.
How many communities around here have new buildings or newer buildings?
Well, Marshall, actually it's not really new anymore, but they built a facility almost, we kind of took a lot of their ideas, and they had their six 2-deep fire bays and a 2-deep EMS bay, and they built that in 2002 for $2.3 million. Deerfield built their initial station in 1987, and they added on more than double their size of their station in 2005. And at that point is when we kind of ran out of room ourselves. We bought an extra engine that was for limited access out at Oakland and different places. We can't get a big engine around, and we had to get rid of a tender and an engine at one point in order to get everything in the station. And we used to have the gear in between the apparatus. All the gear was in between, but now we have it in one area in the corner of the building, so it's not quite so traffic bad. But
One of the closest, newest build stations is Fort Atkinson, I believe. Is that
Yeah,
probably one of the newest station builds in our area, which is really close?
Yeah.
Do you know the numbers on that? I think
they moved in last spring, I think, but they remodeled their station, and they added on and remodeled. They added on, I can't remember the square footage, but the bill was 5.5, and the
5.5 million.
5.5 million. They were more or less. Keller also did that project for them, and Keller indicated that addition was real similar to what the square footage what we were looking at, in which there was a commission meeting where a community member had asked, well, do we got the 6.5 project, and they got 5.5, and so they asked, why is their project $1 million, ours $1 million more than theirs? They said, well, they're building it right now, you're building it in 2 years. So but back to the recruitment, well, that would be it's really nice when like we talked the other day, there's 3 different Oakland roads in our fire district, and be nice for that person to be around long enough to know which Oakland road they're going to when the bell goes off. So.
Do we have a Zoom question?
No, I think I was just trying to mute somebody. They
Oh, okay.
fell off mute.
I wanted just to take a minute to talk about the recruitment standpoint, just from the EMS side.
Okay.
We've had a pretty big difficulty nationwide and in the state and in the region with retention of EMS paramedics, specifically as the higher level trained and educated EMS providers, and then even the intermediates and EMTs. And the reason why is because there's so much competition. Just like in any line of work these days, there's worker shortages, and EMS and firefighting is no different. Recruitment with this building being built will definitely help our ability to recruit and retain. Here's why. Having a state-of-the-art facility that allows for the sleeping quarters and the private areas to go to the bathroom, the private areas to sleep, the private areas for our responders during an ice storm to be able to come in and sleep and not have to come from home. In 1993, forgive me dating myself, I was a volunteer. As a volunteer firefighter and EMT in 1993, I volunteered at a station about this size in southeastern Wisconsin, and I was able to stay at the station in 1993 in a dorm and sleep with about 5 or 6 other people in the dorm, and was able to stay there. That was in 1993. So fast forward, and here we are, in 2022, and we really need to look at the ability to recruit and retain not only the volunteers, but the paid staff and the part-time staff as well. A state-of-the-art facility will absolutely help me retain volunteers and recruit volunteers, which is the footprint, and retain and recruit full-time staff and part-time staff, which is also the footprint. So You know, just imagine yourself in your line of work going to work or driving or whatever it is that you do, a state-of-the-art vehicle or working in a state-of-the-art station. It definitely adds to this job satisfaction and can add to it. Spouses are a big part of all of our lives, or significant others, and they play a part in, you know, oh, you have to sleep in a room with, you know, 4 other people and some are different, you know, opposite sex. Oh, you guys all have 1 bathroom or 2 bathrooms to use, and one's running in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt and the other one's running out. All those privacy things are a concern at our current station. They won't be a concern if we have a new station build. It will be built modern. So that's another thing for recruitment. It's definitely a concern. A smaller community does not have the ability to pay responders what Sun Prairie and City of Madison can pay their responders. They just can't. A police officer in the village of Cambridge, if there was a, you know, small village police department, cannot compete with the City of Madison police officer. So we have to do things as a small community, such as a building or a good work environment and a good workplace and a good place to volunteer, to be able to compete. I cannot pay the $10,000 or $12,000 that a responder gets more in Madison or Sun Prairie. Their budget is 10 times the size of ours. So we do have to look at other creative ways, and a building is one of those ways.
Then to maybe add a little bit more to that, Terry, do you mind talking about like the volunteer firefighters and the cost to?
Well, we're totally volunteer. We do get $10 a call.
Not an hour, a call.
Yeah, no matter if it's a half-hour call or if it's a 12-hour call, and we've had some 12-hour calls or more. So it's a kind of a stipend to help clean your clothes and pay for your gas getting to and from the station, and gives you a little coffee money. But so
One coffee.
yeah. But and also, you know, our goal as the volunteer fire department is to stay volunteer. If we can stay volunteer and not have to put people in house during the day or 24 hours a day, we can save this district a lot of money. I mean, if we had to pay people to come to the station, stay there, it'd be well over $1 million a year to cover that. And if we can stay volunteer for 5-6 years yet, you know, I don't have a crystal ball to see what's going to happen down the future, but we can pay for this entire building with the savings on the labor cost for the firefighters. And that's what we're trying to do. I joined in 1975.
See, you beat my date.
And so 1975, and the end of, I think it was in December, in March of that year, we had the 76 ice storm. And boy, was my eyes that were opened up when the power came back on the village, and we had 3 fire calls all at one time, and we were running around like the Keystone Cops, and then the power went back out again. I think we were out of power for a week, 9 days
Wow.
was it? So it got to be, that first half day was pretty fun without power, but after that it wasn't very much fun. But in the community at that point, the meeting place for anybody to go was down at Marsden's restaurant. I mean, we didn't have power at the firehouse either. So, but this new building will have a generator that will run the entire building. The generator we have now up at our building runs the doors and a couple lights and the radio, but it doesn't run the entire building. We can run that entire building. If the power's down in the village, we can continue to operate as normal. We can be the command post for the entire area. People can come in and if we have disaster type thing, they can come in. We can have emergency management there from either Dane or Jefferson County or both. Red Cross, the Salvation Army could come in, and we'll have the state-of-the-art communications available for them to communicate with the higher-ups and different things. So it's one thing I'm really looking forward to have a facility that will be able to do that. I think it's really important for the community, or the overall, like Marcus talked, the whole area, to have something like that to take care of any problems. It's just really important to me, that type of thing. So.
The fire chief makes an excellent point that probably hasn't been driven home enough, and that is that this station is the community station. It's the community's building. If we build this and it's voted to be built, it's your building. I mean, yes, it's the responders' building to respond out of, but we're your responders. We're the people that respond to your family's emergencies and the citizens and the visitors of this district. So it's the community's fire station, and it's the region's fire station. So, and I think the fire chief is making an excellent point. Yes, fire and EMS stations in this community and all the communities nationwide are used as disaster area staging. They're used for shelters, which this one would be. They're actually used by the community for events. Again, this is a community station. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
This cost, is that for square footage only, or is that for square footage plus equipping this building?
I think it would be all the equipment and fixtures would be included in that cost.
You talking about furniture or
Furniture type.
Everything. Everything that you
Turnkey.
need. I mean, you've got a bigger building, there's gonna be more equipment needed, I would assume. You can't spread out what you got now. You gotta have extra for all this stuff. I was just wondering if.
The original plan, the 6.5 from Keller included the fixtures and the furniture and everything.
The property acquisition dollars are in
Yeah,
that
the
number.
280,000 for the pizza pit.
Consultants' fees would be in there as well.
Yeah.
What?
And then.
Yeah, there'd be the ventilation.
What you have now is working.
Here's the brief breakdown that I was sent by Keller, just kind of it's not like the all-inclusive list, but the building envelope, HVAC, direct connect vehicle exhaust system, plumbing, fire suppression, electrical, generator, security and communication, fire alarm. Solar is an option, but that was taken out to cut costs. Furniture is not a dollar figure in there, though Terry's been talking to Space Saver. This includes site work, demo, environmental testing and abatement, asphalt, engineering design, soil borings, contingency, and land purchase. Now, obviously, these are just part of the conceptual phase and the estimate to put together the referendum number, but that's what's making that up.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah. Any other questions? We have about 20 minutes left before we wrap up. And I don't know if there were any of the other points on some of the other slides, Sheila, that we didn't get to initially.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Stanley for his remarks. I agree with his position on everything, and at least in this particular case. I would like to know if you could put together some sort of a fact sheet on if people are pushing for delaying this project, what it would actually cost, and to approach it differently, instead of a design build or to go with a whole new group, what it would cost to have new architectural plans and the new bidding and the site work and all of that sort of thing. If you can segregate out what those particular costs are, that would already be included in the Keller bid.
Sure.
Are you asking for a comparison if it's delayed, or are you asking? Would it be a different number if there's a different group doing the work?
I'm having a hard time hearing, but basically, it seems to me there would be a lot of additional costs that would be associated with going in a different direction if this referendum failed.
Okay.
And that should be made public prior to the vote.
Well, the cost would be related to construction materials services going up, because that's all they're doing right now. And any delay, I mean, right now, we've seen like between 7 and 15% increase in just kitchen equipment. And the delays in having orders fulfilled has stretched remarkably. So it's really easy to look at the Mortenson Construction has a construction index which is available online. They track the costs. You can see that. But any delay because of the referendum being voted down, I'm pretty certain will cause costs. Exactly what, we can't predict, but there will be more. And even worse than that, with all the idiocy that's going on in the world, I mean, shipping is getting shut down from major commodities countries because of what's happening over in Ukraine and Russia. We haven't even factored that in. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Okay. But things are happening, will be affected by those raw materials not being released from Russia, who's a big supplier of that, and Ukraine will be disrupted for a while. Odessa, their key port, is under attack. So, I mean, I'm not trying to make you scared or anything, but I mean, it's just one of those things that is going to affect anything that is delayed, and it's going to affect anything that isn't delayed.
My specific question was, in addition to those points, which are all very good, was that it seems like some of this work has already been done. So there are people still pushing to go in another direction. Wouldn't you have to repeat those? Could you pull out what those repetitive costs would be related to the architect, et cetera?
As I understand it, $1,500 has been spent so far, and you would be able to reuse all of the work that's been done. And it would be a starting point. Even if Keller was to continue on, there would still be changes as you go into the design development phase. But you have this opportunity with, if you start over and say, okay, it's a new RFP, to get different ideas, maybe a different approach, possibly a way to get more for your dollar. You just don't know without asking those questions and seeing what the results of the RFP would be. The worst, if you chose to do that, and let's say it did pass, the worst thing that would happen is that you might lose up to 2 months of time, but you may end up getting more than what's currently being proposed.
I'm very skeptical, but I just want to go on record as saying that.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you for your time.
It's an unknown thing until you go down that road, if that makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions?
So is the work that Keller has done up to this point, is that our information or is that Keller's?
It's yours.
So we can use just what you just said. We could use Keller's drawings and needs assessment and all that other stuff.
Yeah, you guys have copies of it. You
Okay.
just, you know.
I didn't know if it was copyrighted or.
They don't own that.
Okay, good.
I mean, it's your fire department.
With public money.
Yeah.
It might be different with private, but with public money.
They'll squawk, possibly, but I mean that's the deal that they struck. And you know, honestly, you're in a situation where you might want to take those 2 months to look at it to see if you couldn't get something better. I don't, you know, that's part of your thought process as a community. Having a bit of competition at this stage would be healthy for them, my opinion. Anybody else? Patty? No?
We will post this. This presentation will be posted. We recorded the Zoom, and Mr. Zabel has recorded it here. We're posting on
on the village website tomorrow morning, probably about 7 o'clock. Go all the way to the bottom, look for the YouTube icon.
Okay, so on the bottom of the village website tomorrow morning, after 7, look for the YouTube icon, and you'll be able to access it there. Anybody has any need for any additional information, they can feel free to put their email address, if you hadn't when you signed in, on the back as you leave. We'll make sure that we follow up. There are other informational sessions still scheduled, so check out, there's another postcard coming in the mail in the next week, but all the dates were on the original. Oh, how much was Keller paid?
$1,500.
That's it?
That's
Yep.
it.
And that's just for conceptual design, so they've really not engineered anything at this stage.
How many
Right.
hours have they put in?
I'm a lot. I mean, it was.
A lot of meetings anyway, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Lot
they
of
they
hours for
they
meetings.
they did a lot of work for that $1,500.
Yes, they did. And
And
comparatively, there were 2 other bids for $30,000 or $35,000
Yeah.
to do the initial needs assessment work.
yeah,
So-
I don't have. They were in that area. I don't have the
Yeah.
exact figure. 2 other companies were interviewed that same night.
I've heard 50,000 for a common number for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
If there are no other questions, then?
So please, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, please do so. I will give you a tour. I'll sit down and we'll talk with you, and we can hash it out. And please stop in at the next. When's the next?
The
Next event?
Next event is March 10th at the sports page, 5 to 7, 11 to 1 and 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on March 10th. There'll be an open house at the fire station on March 12th, which you'd really like people to come to the station and actually see what's going on there.
Yeah.
Especially if you have concerns about whether this even should happen. Because when you walk around and see it,
If we get a new firehouse, will you guys do the Fireman's Festival again?
Well, we'll certainly try.
If you see to it that it happens,
I need a festival.
we'll throw a festival.
If anyone has a question after tonight, who should they direct it to?
Probably to me.
To Terry?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. So the address, the email address is cambridgevfd@gmail.com, just for general questions.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a tour of the station, they can leave a message at the station.
Yep. 423-2014. And then, and please access our website. It's the cambridgevfd.com. There's lots of information on what we do, who we are, what we're about, everything. So lots of information there. And I think the EMS has a website too there.
Mark, do you have any last remarks?
No, people will tell us what they want, I guess.
You'll find out.
Yep.
Early voting starts March 15th. So if you don't want to vote on April 5th, you want to do it on your terms, March 15th. There are magnets to remind you of that. Please take one as you leave.
Thank you for everyone on Zoom who attended, and thank you everyone in the room who attended. We appreciate it.
And thank you to the library for helping us with all of this.
Yeah.
Joan's not in here, but thank you, Joan, Dean as well. So you've been very gracious and helpful. Couldn't have done it without you. And thank you to Gary Zabel.
Yep.